Welcome back to Munro Live. Today we have a BMW i7, a fairly high-end vehicle, nicely trimmed. We're going to go ahead and start looking through this, paying particular focus to the interior, but before we do that, I want to talk about some of the exterior styling. This is truly a sedan. It has a sedan shape, not a hatchback, not an SUV, which again, it's personal preference to the person. Me, I prefer sedans. I've always preferred sedans over top of an SUV or a hatchback styling. So I like the proportions of the vehicle in general. Looking at some of the different decorative features around the vehicle, take a look at these headlights. Now, if you remember when we reviewed the BMW iX, we talked about that little crystal knob that was in the center console and then the crystal that were on the seat controls. That also is present in this vehicle, but they've included that crystal cut shape within the headlights themselves. So it's kind of nice tying in that feature rather than just those individual locations. It's more throughout the vehicle. Coming down the side of the vehicle, again, more of a traditional sedan shape. The door handles. There are pockets for door handles, but they're basically permanent pockets. We don't have a deployable handle or any handle that's sticking out. So it does give you the shaved look, but it still gives you that positive feel of having a handle. The reason why I wanted to open up the trunk right now is I wanted to mention the fact that these are not fold down rear seats. It's more of a higher end trim level than that. So your trunk storage is what you have for trunk storage. Now you'll notice the size of the opening that is created by this door. It's very, very shallow bin here. So we have almost full use of the area when you're trying to load in bags or other things like that. It's not a very stylish trunk. It's very, very simple, but it's very, very usable and very, very deep. So let's look at this door. This is a cut and sew upper panel. Fully wrapped dart seams. This is not a thermoformed material, which we've seen and reviewed on a lot of other vehicles. This is a hand cut and sew. That actually continues down the vehicle. Even the bottom, this is not direct plastic. This is an actual hand wrapped material. So we have those crystal trim pieces, which are actual switches for controlling the seat. We saw that in the BMW iX, but they continue that look even onto this touch panel here. This has some controls, but it has that cut crystal look throughout the entire panel while also integrating those controls. Real metal. Now this could be laser cut, this could be an acid etch to cut out all these openings, but metal panel for speaker covers. Yes, there is a piano black, a cut and sew fabric type material, but even in here, if we look down inside of this door pocket, that is actually cut and sew all the way onto the inside. You can see the seam at the bottom that they had to put in there in order to cover the entire interior. They have done everything that they can on this door from a luxury standpoint. From top to bottom, this screams luxury. But what do we do at Munro Live? We talk about costing. Now, a lot of our customers want us to look at costing to try and save them money. So I have to recognize where money is being spent within a vehicle. But this, to me as a consumer, when I am paying a premium, if I am paying for something that is very, very high end, these are all of the features that I am looking at to verify that I got what I paid for. I can see the money being spent on all of those surfaces throughout this door. These are leather seats, but you'll notice that the leather is actually on the edges and on the back. Now that's kind of opposite of what we normally see. If they put leather in the seat, they always put leather on the seating surface, and it's vinyl around all the wrapped edges. This has a quilted fabric for the seating surface. Now, I don't know if every trim level or every version comes with that fabric or if you can get it with another material, but what is special about that type of a quilted fabric? It, again, gives you a basically sitting on a couch feel. A lot of plushness, a lot of luxury. Now, what do I mean by luxury? If you look at the traditional vehicles in the 19-teens and 1920s, a luxury car would have had a fabric interior. A lower trim level car would have had a leather interior. Why? Why would leather be on the cheap vehicle and fabric be on the high-end vehicle? At the time, leather automatically came in a sheet. So after tanning, you could cut it, sew it into pattern sewed into a seat. Where fabric had to go through a loom, it had to be woven. All of that is labor. All of that labor is money, paying people to do that. And the textile industry wasn't built up enough at the time for a high-end fabric to be was not built up at a time for a high-end fabric to be readily available for all those vehicles. So fabric was what you got on a high-end vehicle, a very, very plush fabric, whereas leather you got on the low end. It kind of reminisces back to that type of an era. If you look at the instrument panel, we see the cut and sew up top coming into that wood grain panel. It's a very blonde wood, very, very light, going all the way down to the bottom. Now, that bottom area is also cut and sew wrapped. Lots of times in a normal priced vehicle, by the time we get below the air vents, that's all going to be plastic going all the way down. Not in this vehicle. So let's look at this headliner. This headliner is a wrapped Alcantara. Actual cut and sew. You can see all the seams that they put in order to make this headliner fit to all of the shape. Now, on a traditional headliner, all of this would be thermoformed. They would put in the panel, they would put in all of their foam and fabric layers. It would go into a big press that would set the adhesive and also form and shape all of those materials. They did not do that here. What did they do here? This is an actual separately cut and sewn cover that gets applied to this large panel. Now, all of this is cost. All of this is manual labor. All of this is a possibility of scrap on the assembly line. Because thinking about it, you're trying to do this large sewn piece. You're trying to have all of the different cut and sew seams land exactly where they need to land. And knowing that if I mess up that seam, the position of that seam, it scraps this entire part going through the entire overhead. So you end up with a very, very high scrap rate when you're dealing with a full cut and sew headliner. But if you are the manufacturer, that is a worry, that is a cost. If you are the customer who's paid $150,000 for a vehicle, this is all evidence of the labor and the care that was put into that manufacturing. So if I'm talking from a cost savings aspect to the OEM, I hate to say it, but I would tell them, do not do that. You've just signed yourself up for this permanent cost that is going to be across all of your vehicles. But from a customer standpoint, if I'm trying to tell someone where they are getting value, this shows me the labor and the value that went into the designing and developing this vehicle. So on the door, there is a control panel. This control panel can access several different features of the rear occupant. So our seats, our climate, our lighting. These seats actually offer massaging features in them, which is quite nice. You can make a phone call from your center display. But there's another feature here that's kind of unique. If I go to display, fold down, I now have privacy curtains that are popping up, which are shading me. And I have a fold down theater screen, large widescreen for the rear seat passenger. It is giving you a theater experience, true theater experience within your vehicle. Still have the nice reclining, massaging seats. Again, luxury defined everywhere. Talking about those seats, we had mentioned the fact that the seating surface is actually fabric, but yet on the sides and on the back, they're including leather. Again, it doesn't make sense to most people why you would put the leather in the areas that someone is not sitting on. But it gives you a nice clean look, nice supple feel to the rear seat occupant. Even here, this is another thing. This is all money. I'm paying for this bezel. I'm paying for this sliding door for my USB plug. Rather than have that be exposed, which most vehicles would, we're actually given a small trim cover to cover it out. The amount of money that is spent on trimming out this USB probably was more expensive than the USB. But the money, they're not trying to save money on luxury and comfort. From an engineering and manufacturing perspective, I have always hated deployable cup holders. I always question the mechanisms, whether they're going to get hung up, whether a tab is going to break, breaking in process. But a deployable cup holder does provide a nice clean look when you are not using them. So it's nice to be able to store them away. This is a flock line center console for the rear passenger. The question would often come up, well, there's a console right there. Why do the rear seat people need a storage console? Again, where is the owner sitting in this vehicle? There's a possibility the owner is sitting in that seat. So this is providing the owner storage. So from a cost standpoint, whenever I'm looking at a vehicle, I always try and pay attention to where did they spend money and where did they decide to pull money out. A lot of times, if that's a $50,000 vehicle, if it's a $30,000 vehicle, that's where I really get picky. Because at $50,000, I expect a certain level, which is often lacking in especially EVs at this time. At a $30,000 vehicle, I'm somewhat impressed with what they're able to do. I can accept where they have pulled back on their costs, where they have pulled back on some of the trim features. This being a $150,000 vehicle, I can see money everywhere, and I would expect that. I would not expect to see areas where they have cut back. I would not expect to see areas where they have provided the same type of part, the same type of feature that they just carried up from their $30,000 vehicle. And I do not see that here. So thank you very much for watching Munro Live with our review of the BMW i7, and please look forward for future videos.